from Koreatown, Los Angeles. Thank you for tuning in to Ktown Social Club. This is where the world gathers to talk about the issues that you really care about. It's a different kind of a talk program. We're the only show that offers perspectives from the far left to the far right. Leave a comment, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and smash that notification bell. Check the description box below to follow all of our social media. And I'm Michael Kim, joined today by Ed Choi, Doug Kim, and a very special guest today coming in all the way from Atlanta. It is the
Free thinker,
Matt Kim. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. Honored to be here. Amazing. Super cool studio. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for coming. Then, you know, many of you may be familiar with Matt, his face. I've seen it all over my Instagram for quite a while. He's also on YouTube. He's everywhere, right? Doug, you know, you invited Matt.
Yeah.
And,
I guess it was interesting. I think I was talking to Michael Wan about you initially because, like, I think he was suggesting I kind of like check your stuff out. And then I actually clicked on your Twitter and I noticed you were already following me. So I was like, oh, wait, how did he?
Wow.
So I followed back and then, I messaged you after that and we came into contact and I was like, oh, like he's, I kind of like looked over a few of your videos. Like I think I saw the Tucker Carlson interview and I was like, oh, he's someone who's not part of the mainstream. So I think like, that's someone I'd like to talk to.
Cool.
Because, very similar sorts. I think like Asian Americans in general, they're sort of coming to some sort of consciousness about what's actually going on. I think like we've been taught a certain sort of narrative, just like keep your head down, just assimilate, don't worry about anything else, just get good grades and become a doctor and the rest will work. We were told like almost like not to even think about politics or what's going on. Just like focus on your studies and get a good job and life will be great. But I think in the past 10 years with COVID and with anti-Asian hate, I think there's been a collective like awakening, so to speak. And,
awakening, or at least people realizing what they've been told is not true and looking for some other, some other answers, whether it's true or not. They're not trusting what's just being told to them anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah, before we get into that, I want to find a little bit more about Matt. So you're a Korean-American dude. You're from Atlanta. Were you born there? Like, what's your background like?
I grew up in New York, New Jersey area. I went to school in Ohio, so I went to Ohio State. I ended up in Atlanta about 12 years ago. Really enjoyed it, liked it. Kind of a cross between Ohio and New York, where you get a lot of New York things, but it's a lot more quiet and conservative like Ohio is. And got married, had a kid, and now it's kind of home.
Cool. My mom also went to OSU in the 70s, so
Nice.
I'm always meeting Koreans who who were in Ohio. That's really odd, but okay.
Of all the universities, it actually has the most international students in Korea, of Korean.
Oh, I see. OSU.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have a direct program with Yonsei.
Oh, okay.
So you get a lot of engineering students that go back and forth, and the credits that you have at Ohio State transfer into Yonsei, and the credits from Yonsei transfer to Ohio State. So you get a lot of back and forth between that.
Okay, cool. And so you were actually born in New York or New Jersey, you mean?
I was actually born in Idaho.
Wow. That's
you might be the
where-
first Korean
Isn't that like
I've heard.
Napoleon Dynamite area?
Yeah, my father went there for
Mormons.
graduate school. And it's funny because back then, in the late 70s, when in Korea, they don't have internet, they don't have booklets. Like, how do you figure out which university you're going to go in the United States? And he walked into one of these college offices because they had all the pamphlets on the side. And he was living a soul. He didn't want to live in the city. He wanted to go somewhere more country and rural. He saw a brochure. And he's like, this is beautiful.
Wow.
I want to go here. And he applied and he got in. He showed up and he was like, where the hell am I? In the middle of nowhere. I'm the only Korean here. And I think there was maybe 8 or 9 other Korean students in his graduate program or at his school.
Okay.
And then that's kind of
They all
where I
fell for
started.
the same trick.
Yeah, they saw the beautiful brochure. They showed up. There's no college visits, It's not
It's
like you're
kind of
visiting.
funny because, when my mom talks about before she immigrated to America, she could immigrate in the 80s, but like, or she went to school first in the 70s actually, in Fordham, but like, she was saying that when she was in Korea, they would always, say America is a land of like where the roads are paved with gold and all these other things. And when they get there, they're like, oh wait, it's a little different.
Right. So how long did you live? You were born in Idaho. How long were you there until?
I was only there till maybe 90 days because I did my 100-day in New Jersey. Oh. So I was literally just born there. And then after I was born, we moved.
Okay, so you don't really remember Idaho life.
I went back for the first time, I'm going to say like 3 or 4 months ago, because I was curious.
Yeah.
I actually ran into a guy named Pastor Doug Wilson, and he had done an interview with Tucker Carlson. And I found out that this super Christian nationalist, he's like the epitome of Christian nationalism, that he was my next door neighbor the day I was born.
Wow.
Not just like in the same neighborhood, but we had a duplex. And on one side was my family, and the other side was the most famous Christian nationalist
The same
in
building.
America. In the
Okay.
same, we shared a wall.
Right.
When I found that out, I was like, I need to go talk to this guy. I'm so curious.
Yeah.
And I went to Moscow, Idaho, and I started asking around.
Wait,
and
it's spelled like
Yeah.
Moscow, like the capital of Russia?
Yes. And I showed up there, and all the people in that town knew who my parents were. Because Pastor Doug used to tell stories in his sermons, he writes in his books about this random Korean family that used to live next door to him, and that was my parents. So somehow I got to know them really well, and we did an interview with him, and it's different. I mean, this is considered what most would consider the extreme right.
Yeah.
And I got to see firsthand how they live their lives and how their ideology actually affects their community and their families. And you can say whatever you want about the hard right. It works for them. And that's what I learned firsthand.
Yeah.
So Moscow, that's where you were. Your first home was in Moscow, Idaho, which I see is right on the border with Washington State.
Yes.
Okay, so I thought you were out near like Boise or something, but you're not close to Seattle either. Okay, wow, it is kind of in the middle of nowhere.
It's literally in the middle of nowhere.
And you're near like an Indian reservation. What is this?
I have no idea. You can't really fly directly to there. So I had to fly into Spokane. And from Spokane, I'd have to drive like 2 or 3 hours down to Moscow.
Oh, from Spokane. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, it's kind
And
of.
then you moved to Jersey?
Yeah, and then I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up in Palisades Park.
Okay, yeah.
that's where all the
so-
Koreans are, right?
All the Koreans
Oh,
are.
well, it wasn't when you were going up there.
When I was in first grade, there was only 2 or 3 Koreans in my grade.
Wow.
By the time I left when I was about 14 or 15 years old, 60 or 70% of the school was Korean. So I lived through the huge influx of Koreans coming into town.
I grew up in Westchester County. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very familiar.
Yeah.
It's really Korean.
I'm like probably like 5 or so years younger. So yeah, I might have been when that influx.
Yeah.
One of those influx.
So you mostly grew up in New Jersey, New York, like from your baby years to your teenage years.
Correct.
And, did you have a lot of, I'm guessing you had a lot more Korean friends then? Did you have to
Yeah.
get bullied or what was it like for you?
No, like when you're young, I mean, when you're 6 to 10 years old, race isn't a thing.
Right.
And then between 10 and 14, race becomes a thing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's a third of the school is Korean, a third of the school is Hispanic, and a third of the school is white. Because there's no black people in Palisades Park, no Indian people in Palisades Park. Actually, my first Indian I've ever met in real life was when I moved to Ohio.
Oh wow.
Because you never knew they existed. Only in like Simpsons. That's the only reference I've ever had to them. And when I was maybe 12, 13 years old, the Koreans would get in fights with the Hispanics. And all the Koreans from Palisades Park, from Leonia and Fort Lee, they would show up and everyone gets in fights. That was a thing back then, like race wars.
Wow.
And by the time, I want to say a lot of my friends that I grew up with at the time, a lot of them don't even speak English that well. Because you can live and survive there without speaking in English. I think that's really
Sounds
interesting.
very similar to LA, Koreatown.
Very
K-Town,
similar.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up there and then you left there to go to Ohio for university, I guess? Or
I went to high school in Ohio. My dad's job had transferred him to Ohio. So we all moved together as a family and then did 4 years in high school in Ohio in the Cleveland area. And then I did Ohio State. And then I went right back to New York.
And then you went back to New York, and then eventually, how'd you end up in Atlanta then?
So I was living in Flushing for a couple of years.
Okay.
In the heart of Koreatown and Flushing. Yeah. So 146 in Northern Boulevard, which is where all the Koreans live. Yeah. And I was there for a couple of years. And I was doing insurance at the time. I had a small insurance business. I just sold it. And I was kind of like, man, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I just sold my business. I don't know what I want to do next. I'm getting tired of New York because I was doing a lot of partying, a lot of hanging out. It gets really draining.
Did you go to Circle?
Did a lot of Circle, you know, all of that.
That was a New York City Korean club.
Korean club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like a booking.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then a friend of mine from Georgia, he called me one day. He's like, Matt, like, how are you? How's New York? I was like, dude, like, I'm kind of done here. You should come to Atlanta.
How old were you at the time?
I was 25, 26.
Oh, wow. Still pretty young then.
Yeah. He called me. He was like, Matt, you should come to Atlanta. You might really like here. Maybe 28, something like that. And he was like, it's a cross between New York and Ohio. I went to high school. I went to college with him. It has everything New York has, but it's really suburban and quiet and conservative, like Ohio was. Mm-hmm. You might really like it. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool, Johnny. I'll see you. And I hung up the phone. And I was with my girlfriend at the time. And I said, hey, I think I'm going to go to Atlanta. And she's like, good for you. Because she know I've been like moping around the house. I wasn't doing anything. She's like, when are you going to go? I thought about it for like 30 seconds. I was like, I'm going to go today. She's like, oh, okay. How are you going to get there? I'm going to drive.
Wow.
And I
That's
threw
a
a bag
long
of
drive.
clothes in my trunk.
Yeah.
I gave $100 to the first homeless guy I saw, and I left. And I've been away from New York ever since.
You left New York in your car and you never went back.
I mean, I went to visit or
Oh,
whatever.
Wait, but how did
yeah.
you take care of, the apartment and all your...
Went back a few months later just to
Oh,
clean up.
just
My
to-
lease was gonna end in a few months, whatever.
And then your girlfriend joined you in Atlanta.
And they don't follow. She
It's
really
like,
liked
good for
New
you.
York.
Good
Yeah.
for you.
You know, and we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna stay in touch and we'll get back together. Like, it's not true. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, she made the smart move. You never move with someone.
Yes.
It never works out.
Oh.
It never works out.
yeah, we just
Okay.
left, and I left, and that was it. And I've been in Atlanta ever since. And
So
What
yeah.
you end up doing once you got there?
I stayed at a friend's couch. I didn't know what to do. I had no plan. I had been in the insurance business. So I went on the Korean paper and I saw like hiring for someone with insurance experience. I was like, huh, I have insurance experience. Let me apply for this job. Ended up being a roofing company.
Okay.
A hailstorm had just gone through Atlanta and they were looking for people to negotiate with the insurance adjusters to get people free roofs. Okay, I can do this. So I learned to climb roofs. I spent an entire summer like on top of roofs, like understanding how damage works, negotiating with insurance people. And after a couple months, I was like, this is really easy actually. All you gotta do is show up, the insurance company writes you a check on the spot, and the entire sales cycle is, do you want a free roof? The insurance companies are paying for it.
Wow.
I said, I could do this. So I started I started a roofing company.
And you still are doing that today?
No, I did it for like a year. And, and I took the top sales guy. I said, dude, like, you want to come work for me? I'm going to start a company and I'll pay you a higher commission. He's like, you will? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. And we did something like 200 houses that year.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And the insurance company money dried out.
Uh-huh.
And then we moved on with our lives.
Okay. Cool. So it was a good year or two.
Yeah, I mean, it helped me survive and helped me kind of get settled in to Atlanta. And more than anything, it got me an opportunity to see all of Georgia and see all of Atlanta and understand kind of how the ecosystem works there, who's who, where certain neighborhoods are, and just get a feel. And throughout my time, I just decided, like, I really like it here.
Yeah, I was in Panama last year, Central America, and I met with some Korean people there. And there was this one guy. He's like, oh, you're from LA. So yeah, I've been there. My daughter went to NYU, whatever. I've been there. My other daughter's in Atlanta, and I've been to Texas. I have to say the best place for Koreans in all of America, I think, is Atlanta. So you definitely agree with that.
I agree.
And it snows in the winter, and it's very hot and humid summers. What's it like there?
It snows maybe once a year, give or take. Okay. The summers are really hot and humid. But outside of that, like the cost of living is really low. The biggest difference between Dallas and Atlanta, because those are two places everyone's going these days. Atlanta's hills and trees and really green, and Dallas is just dry and flat and really boring.
Are you talking about everyone? When you're saying everyone, do you mean like Koreans, or
Yes.
do you mean like okay?
Yeah, so in Atlanta, either you're from LA, you're from New York, or you're from Korea. And why would you come to LA now, where the cost of living is really high,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of crime, and it's a little harder to get started. Where in Atlanta, you can get everything that you would get in LA, except
So you're
It's
saying
safe.
that it's almost like if you're a Korean or like a Korean American, it's almost like a good place to start. for,
yeah,
like,
I mean,
newer
if you're gonna come from
Koreans.
Korea, a lot of people come from Korea, and if you have a little bit of money, maybe you scratch together 50 grand, 100 grand, or whatever, and you come to America. A lot of families come this way, right?
Yeah.
Especially now.
Yeah,
That money gets you nothing in New York or LA.
yeah,
You can't even start. Actually, by the time you start your life, you're broke. In Atlanta, you can like start a house, you can maybe start a business. You can do so much more with that money
I
that
see.
you have. And if you're in LA and maybe you own a small business, maybe you own a restaurant, maybe you have 20% equity in your house, maybe your house is worth $1 million here, which is like really small. You get to Atlanta and you can buy 5x the house. Then all of a sudden, you're like, why are we struggling here when we can go there and live a little more comfortably? And there are so many Koreans there that I think we have 6 H Marts. We have a Xi'an market, we have Ashi market, we have 2 Ashi markets. I think we have 10 or 12 Korean supermarkets.
Wow.
We have BCD in Atlanta, like everything you have in LA.
How many
we have there.
BCDs do you have there then?
We only have 1 BCD, but we have, I think, 12 Sundubu places.
Wow.
How would you say? Yeah, how would you say the Korean food there is compared to here?
I like Atlanta Korean food.
Okay.
Before Atlanta really got busy, I would say LA Korean food is the best. I don't think it's that much better. Maybe
No.
LA has the really high-end Korean restaurants,
Yeah.
which people, if you're visiting, maybe are interesting to you. I like just regular Korean food.
Yeah.
I'm not big on these tiny portions of beef
Yeah,
places.
right.
You know, like give me the all you can eat.
Yeah.
Then the portions of meat in Atlanta are bigger than the portions of meat in LA.
Yeah.
You get more for your money. That's even for house, for food, for everything. So it just depends. If you want like really interesting, different types of fusion Korean food, which is LA is really embracing, then yeah, it may be better.
Yeah.
But if you just want Korean food, there's unlimited Korean options.
And the crime is much
Comparable.
better?
Oh, significantly better.
Oh, really?
wow.
Because I hear crazy things about Atlanta too, so I'm not sure.
Okay, I mean, my gauge is where you live. Would you let your wife or daughter walk around past 10 p.m.? And if your answer is, I don't want my wife or daughter walking outside my house at 10 p.m., the system around you is broken. How can you say that you live in a good neighborhood? I don't care how much your place costs. If you can't let your wife or daughter walk outside without you being concerned, there's a problem with your neighborhood. Doesn't matter. I don't care if your place is worth $10 million. In Atlanta, my wife and daughter said, we're going to go walk outside. I mean, and not many people live in the city of Atlanta. All the Koreans are settled in the suburbs. I mean, I don't have any concern of them walking around at nighttime. I think that's a really gauge of like how safe a place is.
Okay. And yeah.
Oh, so then yeah, so this going into like kind of like independent journalism, that's more of a recent turn for you, right?
Yeah.
Like what were you doing kind of like before that, and how did you get into what you do today?
So I had a lighting company. I was selling and distributing commercial industrial LED lights. And it's something I'd done for maybe 7, 8, 9 years. And just normal business. I think during COVID was really tough for me because I was selling a lot to education, government. And during COVID, all the spending and all the projects that I was supposed to be supplying and working on, they all got canceled. Because during COVID, schools don't want to think about lighting and upgrading lighting. They're all thinking about Zoom learning, security, safety, etc.
Yeah.
This became from something that's relatively a priority to something that they never think about. And all those projects got canceled. And then the Biden administration came around, and I'm not a Biden guy, obviously, but he won. And I'm like, okay, at least they're talking about green energy and infrastructure. I'm in LED lighting. It's efficient lighting. At least it'll be good for business.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of federal government programs and contracts. At least they'll be good for business. What I found out through his infrastructure bill and all this spending is that they don't actually spend their money on anything regarding infrastructure. All the contracts that I had they were literally going nowhere. All the money that they said they're going to infrastructure and green spending, I don't know where it went because me being in that industry and business saw $0 of it. Okay, where are you spending your money? Where is this green energy infrastructure money going?
How much was apportioned for that? Like,
Of the $3 trillion?
yeah.
I don't know, billions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then nobody knows where it all went.
I haven't done one government program since the shift in the election.
Wow.
Not one. So that became a huge concern. And it was really hard to kind of recover the business. Business is still around, still alive. About a year and a half ago, my daughter had just been born. She's about 6 months old. And I'm downstairs and I'm yelling at the news. It's probably Sean Hannity. He was like, oh, I love Lindsey Graham or something stupid like that. And I'm yelling at her like, oh, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. And my wife comes running downstairs and goes, you're going to wake up the baby. Go tell someone that cares. I was like, huh. I think I will. And that's how I started.
Was that on TikTok or was that on Instagram?
Yeah, I started a podcast, and I mean, I'd never been on a podcast before. I had never thought about a podcast before. It was not a part of my universe. I had never been in politics. I had never been in media, and I started this podcast. And the first 6 months, no one listens, and your friends all say they're listening. And I ask 10 friends, and I look at my views, and it says 6 views. I'm like, all right, 4 of you guys are lying to me, right? Yeah. And even then, probably most of you guys just watch 30 seconds.
And then turn it
right?
off.
For 6 months, it goes nowhere. But you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know who you are. You don't have your voice. You don't have your cadence. It's a lot of learning. And you can't learn by just watching.
Yeah.
You have to put yourself out there and try and go through the reps. And I remember when Tucker Carlson got fired from Fox. I used to watch a lot of Tucker Carlson. Not even for the entire program. I really liked his monologue. Because when Fox News was all talking about one thing, out of nowhere, Tucker would be like, hey, did you hear about how the government is hiding the UFOs from you? And I'd be like, dude, I want to hear about that. I really liked the fact that he would take a set of facts and present an argument to frame his own viewpoint. I really enjoyed that. And when he got fired, I missed that. I felt like that was missing in my natural knowledge base. So on Father's Day, approximately a year ago, I made my first talking head video. And that first video I did, it was about it was in Seattle. A Korean husband and wife were in a car at a stoplight. A random black guy came up to the car and shot them both in cold blood.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
The husband survived, the wife died, and the wife was 7 months pregnant.
Yeah.
I made a video about that story because it was Father's Day. My daughter was really young. I was thinking about it. I made a video about it. I said, why does the mainstream media not cover this? And I told the story about what happened. And at the end, I said, how many people died that day? And that video did something like 3 or 4 million views in 24 hours. Because the comment section went wild.
Yeah.
The first half of the comment section is, why does the media not cover this? And I didn't even say black. I said non-white. I did that intentionally because I knew that would be kind of interesting way to put it. Oh, it's because it's black on Asian crime and no one talks about that. That's half the conversation. Mm-hmm. The other part of the conversation is how many people died that day? She was pregnant, 7 months old, unborn child. The people that are pro-life or pro-choice, they all struggle with the idea because in theory, talking about life and lump of cells and not born yet, born, inception, etc., so many ways to frame that argument.
Sure.
People talk about that all the time. But when you say it was a 7-month mother that didn't deserve to die, but she was murdered, how many family members did that husband lose?
2.
Everyone's gonna say 2.
Yeah.
And actually in Seattle, the murderer got charged with 1 murder. So that whole premise just made the comment section wild because no one had framed it that way before. And they started thinking about it. And
You put that in the video that it was charged as 1.
I put that in the top comment. And people just went nuts. And not something I was intending to do. I didn't realize that I was going to create this kind of controversial video.
Yeah.
It was just what I was thinking about at that moment because it was Father's Day. And I just spent the day with my daughter. and I saw this thing. It's like Korean guys dies, loses her unborn daughter. It just like hit home.
Yeah.
I made this video, and that started my entire career.
Nice.
Wow. So that was your first video that just blew up.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, you got millions of views.
Yes.
And up until then, it was like 6 views.
Yeah, nobody's listening. I mean, every once in a while, maybe something will trickle up, trickle down, but no one really cares.
And how long ago was that incident?
Father's Day last year.
Father's
So
Day last
June
year.
18th last
Oh,
year.
wow. So it's only been about like, what, 16 months or so? 15,
Yeah, something
16?
like that.
Wow. So, and I guess, and this was in Atlanta?
So over that year, like, would you say your political views have shifted or evolved, or like, what would you say they are now, and what would you say they were back then?
I think it's funny. When I was in college, I used to think I was a Republican. And then as you get older, you start to realize what's going on. I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm just a Republican. I think I'm just a conservative. Now I think I'm just a Christian. I think the evolution has been different. I think you lose faith in institution. You lose faith in the establishments, and realize that at the end of the day, like, you can't really believe anything. And I just need a core set of beliefs and values to keep me centered. And then if I know what my core belief is, then it gives me the ability to explore all directions, because I know where I can come back to.
Yeah. Did you grow up in the Korean church, like, or?
Yeah, I grew up around the Korean church. My parents were really involved in the church. I was one of those, well, they're going to force me to go, so I'm not going to go. I don't really like this, and I don't want to be there. And I'm going to say from when I was about 18, when I had the ability to make my own decision, to maybe 6 months ago, it's not something I really thought about. I don't think I ever thought I was not a Christian, or like I hated religion or anything like this. I didn't think about it. It's not something I really cared about. And over the last 6 months, as you kind of get a peek behind the veil, behind like media, and you get a peek behind the veil of like mainstream news and politics and corporations and like the uber wealthy, like I've had an opportunity to look behind the veil of kind of all of this. And after all this, I'm like, I need something to like keep me balanced and sane. To cleanse my soul, because everything I've seen is so dirty, evil, and disingenuous.
It's funny because I have a hedge fund friend who manages a hedge fund. He's like super Christian his entire life, and he just like, I remember him saying something like, I don't understand how people can be in New York City and not be a Christian, because if they weren't, they'd just be you would just go insane, I guess, was the idea. Or you would go, you just like, from the things that he saw and the things that like, he saw other people in his industry doing. And
You mean like financial manipulation stuff, or
just like,
okay,
not just financial manipulation, but like, the
like
culture
lifestyle?
of that. Yeah, that
Drugs,
lifestyle.
alcohol.
Yeah.
Diddy stuff.
Diddy stuff. Yeah, exactly.
There's Diddy stuff in every single industry and every single institution.
At the top of every, in America.
every single one of them.
I've heard about it. There's a group of some wealthy Koreans here in LA who do those kinds of parties.
I
heard about
wouldn't.
that.
I wouldn't be surprised. They're probably connected to Korean entertainment in Korea, right? Because that's definitely corrupt.
And then you see some of the Korean celebrities that seem like they are against it, and all of a sudden they end up in a car, and
Or
they say they committed
suicide.
they unalive themselves.
Yeah,
And you're like,
exactly.
did they unalive themselves, or were they about to start talking? Maybe they knew too much.
So in Atlanta, then, that was a big story, I'm sure, especially in the Atlanta Korean community. Is the Atlanta Korean community pretty close and tight, or are they just kind of everyone does their own thing? Like, are there lots of community events? Like, they come together a lot, picnics and things like that, or?
It's really similar to LA, but just less people. I think there's 150,000 Koreans in Atlanta. So it's not a small community.
Yeah. So what was the reaction after the shooting in 2021?
For
The March 2021. Remember this shooting of
The women?
The spa
Yeah,
shooting.
the spa
spa-
shootings.
that spa shooting really messes me up, because a lot of the Stop Asian Hate movement spurred from that moment.
Yeah.
I know where that spa is. Most people that comment on that spa don't know where it is. They've never actually been there. It's literally next door to the strip club. It's not a good area. people want to say that it was really Asian focused and Asian hate crime, but the reality is I don't believe so at all. And maybe people in Atlanta may disagree. I don't know. It is a known place of one of these kind of seedy massage parlors. And it's a known place because it's in that area where the strip club is, and it's not the best area. So
you think it was a sex trafficking?
I for sure think it was sexual. It's more sexually related than it was race related.
I see.
But it's easy to take that narrative and
Sure.
say this guy showed up and shot.
No,
a bunch
But
kinda
he went
like-
to 3 different spas, though. He went to 3 separate spas. All of them were Asian.
Yeah, but in those parts of the country, all those spas are run by Asians
Why didn't he target the strip club? Or
because they have
what
more
I'm saying.
security.
okay. Oh, he denies that race. Well, he denies that race played any role.
Well, also, I think like the bobo liberals kind of seized upon that and be like to say like, see, it's the white people hate criming us. It's not the black people. When like for an entire year in 2020, it was mostly black on Asian crimes. So I think like the bobo liberals were trying to run interference with that big story because it was such a shocking kind of event. And yeah, I kind of like, I don't know if I 100% agree that there wasn't any sort of race kind of thing involved, but I do agree that I think a certain narrative was pushed for a certain reason.
I mean, even the whole hate Asian, I get it. I want to protect all Asians, especially Asian Americans. I want there to be a safe society.
Yeah.
And that was really big in 2021. Everyone talked about it. Everyone had the pin. Everyone had the sticker on their social media. But as soon as they realized that it was black Democrats in inner cities targeting Asians, they're like, oh, just kidding. The story's not happening anymore. It's not a real thing. Okay,
when like the percentages were actually going up in 2022 and 2023.
Correct.
Yeah. So
So, I get that we need certain narratives and that it may embetter the cause in order to kind of tie to them. But I don't know. I'm a truth at all costs, like truth absolutist.
no, I agree with that.
And I'd rather we tell the truth and then be able to use the truth to win certain narrative battles rather than take something that's not true and piggyback on it just for the sake of narrative. I'm actually very against that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of that was. I mean, you can say the same about BLM in general. They take a false narrative and they just all piled onto it. And the reality is
yeah, we've already seen the corruption behind
Yeah.
BLM, like the multi-million-dollar houses in Beverly Hills, and all that money going to DEI people who are clearly unqualified and just like get rich off the oppression of black liberation.
So I'm wondering that Doug was gonna look for you, but then he saw that you were already following him. How did you come to be aware of Doug and decide, let me follow this communist?
well, I like to follow and listen to people, whether I agree with them or not, because I'm sure there's a lot of things I don't agree with you on.
Yeah, sure.
But I like people that I feel are honest, genuine, and believe what they believe because they believe it. This is actually the most important thing to me. Actually, the only thing that's important to me. I have no problem listening to ideas of people that I disagree with. I need to know that I really think that person believes it because they believe it, not because someone else told them to believe it. And I think most society, if you ask them to defend their own values and views, they're going to give you what the narrative told them to say.
Right.
There's no point in me talking to you.
Yeah.
Because if I want to know that side of the point, I could just scroll the news.
CNN. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the point of having that conversation? I like that. I think Doug really believes what he says. And as far as maybe I agree or disagree, like at least I felt like there was an honest and genuinity about it. And for me to see a Korean guy, Asian guy out there like, damn the system, and this is
Give
burn
us
it down, whatever. I'm like, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have I felt like almost like kindred spirits a little bit because you referenced The Matrix.
Yes.
And when I saw The Matrix, I was like 15, 16.
16.
Yeah, 16 years old or something like that. And I just remember it blowing me away. I actually saw it at church because like the youth group people were like, oh, well, there's a lot of biblical reference. They were just like bullshitting to just watch a movie at church. But it really kind of like set the stage for me thinking outside of the box myself at a young age. Even though I wasn't a communist at the time. Communism was more kind of like recently. I was more libertarian for a while. But I think I was always kind of like on the fringes of society, thinking like, yeah, something's not quite right that's going on here. I can't explain it, but I don't want to get involved in like the mainstream or whatever. But yeah, what got me involved is something similar. Like you said, you talked about the Father's Day kind of thing. Anti-Asian hate for me, started right when COVID hit. It started right when the guy in that Texas Walmart or whatever stabbed a whole entire family. All of that started in March 2020. It didn't start in Atlanta. And so I've been following it, and then that led me to read certain material like from Malcolm X, from Martin Luther King, being like, what is America really, and what is its relation to race really? And then that led me to read about Lenin and eventually about the Korean War. I'm still like reading all this stuff. Like my whole thing is kind of similar to your thing, where if I want to see the mainstream opinion, I could just go on CNN or whatever. But if I want to know the truth, I feel like you have to go, to the source. You got to read. You got to do the boring thing, and you just like. What I do for the past year now is just like read, especially stuff that was written before 47, which I don't know if you know, but it was the creation of CIA. So like any sort of material like after 47, I feel like has been somewhat manipulated. So like I like to see if there are sources that go but before that time period, so I can like try to ascertain how the Matrix was sort of created.
Great. So what's your take? What's your opinion of communism after following Doug?
Well, I think communism makes sense when you're talking about a small population. So when they do it in places like Singapore or whatever else, like I can see how it works. If you are North Korea and you're trying to figure out how to feed a war-torn population and there's limited resources, then actually I get why that would make sense. If you're talking about United States with 350 million people across 50 states, across hundreds of thousands of miles, it's actually very difficult. There's this example. There is a community that's an Amish community within Pennsylvania, and they live extremely communist type lifestyle. Shared resources, shared views.
Are they the Quakers?
No, it's a separate group. I forget the name, but they're in Pennsylvania. And what they've decided is that everyone shares everything. One guy shovels the ground, and one guy cooks the food, and one girl does the laundry, or whatever else. All shared resources. And it works really well for them. But once they hit 100 people, they have to break off and start a next community. What they've learned really early on is that once you get over 100 people, the guy who's shoveling the dirt as his job, he no longer knows everyone in the community and works less hard. It works in a small community because everyone knows every single person. When I'm sitting there in the sun with no reward, just shoveling away, I'm doing it because I know that my shoveling directly affects every single person that I know. I'm actually bettering society. But once you lose connection with your community and you don't know who everyone is, you don't work as hard. And I think that's really the biggest thing about communism for me, is that on a very small scale, it works because everyone cares about each other, meaning you work hard selflessly, knowing that it can better somebody else.
Because you have a connection.
You have a connection.
Okay.
But with 350 million people,
No connection.
it's even hard to find a connection within a city with just LA.
Or even my neighbor, I can't.
Even your subdivision, you don't care about your neighbor. Then how could it possibly work in a place where you can't even care about the people that live literally next door to you? So I think that's the challenge first.
So then do you consider, like China has about 4 times the population of the U.S. Do you consider China to be communist or something else?
Well, I mean, I've been to China many times.
Oh, where in China?
I've been to Beijing, I've been to Shanghai, I've been to Dalian, I've been to Xinjiang, I've been to Xiamen, I've been to Dongguan City, I've been to Guangdong, I've been to Shenzhen.
Yanji, the Korean area? Yanji? Have you
I've
been
been to Dalian, which is close to North
Okay,
Korea.
right.
Just for personal or business?
Business, work, all of it. And I find Dalian really interesting because there's so many North Koreans there, by the way.
That's where Shineju, the North Korean city, is, I think.
Wait,
Dalian? No, actually, no. Never mind.
Dalian
How do you
is
spell that?
Dalian. It's a newer city. It's right across the Yellow Sea. So between China and Korea, that's where the ports trade.
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
was
there is a
referring-
huge portion, right? Yeah.
interesting.
There's a huge community of North Koreans that work there, which I found fascinating because before I got there, I didn't think in my life I would meet North Koreans in the wild.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I got there, and at the restaurants, at the
North
bars,
Korean
just-
restaurants and the
they're-
bars, yeah.
not just in regular Chinese restaurants, and they'll be like, "Wait, there's a Korean guy here," and they get really excited because they have. There's
What,
not a
yeah.
lot-
What did they think when you say you're an American though?
Well, yeah, exactly. They don't have. They meet like South Koreans because South Koreans go there for business.
yeah.
But they hardly ever, if ever, meet a Korean from America, and they get excited, and they like come up to me at the bar, and they want to buy me drinks, they want to hang out. Like, hey, if you're gonna be in town, let's go here, let's go drink here, let's go eat, because they're
All right, we
fascinated.
got a new place to visit for the Ktown Social Club.
Yes, there's a lot, and they're everywhere. And before that, I think I was there like 4 days. Before that, I thought I'm never gonna meet like just in the wild.
Yeah.
Maybe every once in a while you meet someone that's from there or whatever, but to just meet them constantly in the wild, that just blew me away. And then I realized, wait, what are you guys doing here? I thought you guys weren't allowed to leave.
Right.
Like, no. Just apply for a visa and you go back and forth,
Yeah.
and we go back all the time. I was like, wait a second, that can't be true.
That's not what we heard.
That's not what I'm told.
Yeah, not from the U.S. government.
Yeah, it's more like China and like North Korea are like Canada, United States.
Yeah, they go back and forth
Yeah.
all the time. I was like, what is it like there? And he's like, yeah, there are people that are having a hard time. I get that. But he's like, but we go back and forth. We have family there. Like, it's not that bad for us. It's bad for like a small segment of society. And that really kind of started opening my eyes to
What year was that?
maybe 15 years ago.
Oh
before
wow.
before the travel ban. Okay.
Yeah, maybe 15 years ago. And I was like, man, if the media just highlighted Skid Row and said, this is LA, everyone in the world would be like, wow, LA is horrible.
Yeah.
I almost feel like that's what they're doing there.
That is what they're doing. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you were to highlight only Malibu, like LA is so beautiful.
Right.
They also
everyone's
put it with
beautiful.
a certain sort of filter, like the gray,
Yeah.
like totalitarian filter on it.
And that's what they do to Seoul.
Yeah.
So in Seoul, you only see the most beautiful parts, the only most beautiful people. You only see Apgujeongdong and Gangnam and all the fanciness of
They
all
don't
of
show
it.
you the red light districts.
They
or the,
never show you rural Korea, which is actually really poor. And actually,
That too.
when I go to Korea, I love going and spending time in the Shikoda because like I feel like I get to actually speak to Koreans when I'm there.
Right.
You're like your dad.
Yeah.
Who wanted to go to Shiga
That's
in
all I
America.
want to do. Just take me out there.
But the thing is about North Korea, because I visited there about 10 years ago.
Really?
I went there, and the thing is, once I come back, all these people, especially Korean Americans, people have never been there, never really knew anything about it. I'd been studying it for years, and I finally decided to go. Everyone's just being like, you know, everything's fake, right? You know everything. Like all these people who haven't even been there or studied, they know more than me. And it was kind of annoying. Like, you're just repeating the same stuff that you hear from the news. I actually go there and checked it out, and you're trying to tell me that everything that I saw is fake. I mean, the people you met the real people. That's what they wanted to drink with me too. They were all excited, like, oh, you're from America.
They're
Like,
so curious.
yeah, and I met them in China too, and it was just great. It's like we're all just Korean people there, and yeah, so that always bothered me is like people cannot accept, because North Korea has been portrayed as such a horrible hellhole that even just showing something normal, like a normal picture, is enough to trigger people into being like, that's not real or that's fake, or they just showed that to you. like-
They always show the picture of like the North Korea, South Korea, and the fake picture from the satellite photos that it's like, oh, they don't have electricity or something. It's like,
And-
what are you talking about?
And every time I see that picture, I'm like, I thought we wanted to conserve energy.
That too.
You know,
That
like
too.
I think they're doing a good job of conserving.
Right.
But I think that's really interesting with them, and I don't know how I feel about the government and everything else because
Have
there-
you
there are things
researched
that are
the
good and
Korean
bad.
War?
Yes, I spent a lot of time on the Korean
Oh,
War.
nice. Yeah, I've
And-
been reading a lot too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you realize I've had conversations with a lot of people that are well educated from Korea
Yeah.
about this,
Oh, nice.
and I realize even Koreans in Korea don't know how the Korean War happened. That they don't know their own history.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And then they're like, well, I'll mention certain things.
My parents, my mom didn't know what Kim Il Sung looked like until the 1970s.
It's crazy.
They never showed them any pictures.
Yeah.
Of him.
I'm like, look, like all history is skewed. I think most people accept that now.
Yeah.
But everyone thinks they only think that's true of other people's history. Only other people's history is fake, but our history is not fake. And it's really hard to deal with because you have to go through this cognitive awakening that you don't actually want to realize. And it's hard to deal with. It's because what it does is creates this distrust and everything you've grown up to be known as true. You have to deal with that reality that everyone lied to me. And you said maybe you're waking up about things not being dishonest. It's not about things being dishonest. It's the fact that people are actively lying to you.
Yeah. So when did you come to that realization? Because for me, that realization was in 2021. And I was like, holy shit. Like when I read about the Korean War, when I read Malcolm X, I was like, holy shit, America lied about everything.
Everything.
And I'm just kind of like, now I'm like fucking reading everything right now. But when would you say you came to that point? Was that around the point when you started, or?
Yeah, I think 2020, I think for most people, COVID was the eye-opening awakening moment, right? I remember 2020, I decided because I'm home and there's nothing going on, I'm going to live stream on YouTube because what else are we supposed to do? And I started talking, I didn't watch a lot of content before. I don't watch conspiracy theory content. I was just streaming like, man, something just doesn't feel right about this. Feels like kind of New World Order-ish. And it was just an observation. It's all it is. And I kept on getting messages from YouTube. Misinformation. This is danger to society. You can't talk with these things.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm making light of this situation? What if what I'm saying is actually being harmful to society? Why would YouTube tell me that I'm being harmful if I'm not being harmful? It never occurred to me that they were censoring me.
Yeah.
Why would they tell me that what I'm doing is being detrimental to society if I wasn't? I'm just me in a random corner of Georgia. They are YouTube. They have to know what's going on more than I do.
Yeah.
So I completely quit the internet for years, 3 years. I did nothing on the internet.
Oh, so you even started before, but you stopped because you thought YouTube was.
I thought what I was saying, what if I'm wrong?
Oh, wow.
What if what I say somehow I'm wrong, and because of what my words and what I say, someone were to die? Because this is supposed to be the deadliest pandemic ever, that everyone's dying, that people are dropping left and right. I'm looking around, I don't see anyone dead, but they're telling me they are.
Yeah.
Maybe it's true. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. So I stopped altogether. A couple years in, I was like, holy shit. They were lying to me. What else do they lie about?
Yeah. And it's everything.
And then you realize it's not just one thing. It's literally your entire world is a lie. And then now all I do is I encourage people to think for themselves. Like, you can't take what people tell you as truth because the reality is there's no truth. All you can do is the person I'm listening to, are they being honest? That's actually the most important thing. Because even if someone is trying to say something, the data that they have to create their argument from is flawed. So no one can be perfect in their argument because we only have flawed data.
Yeah.
So the only actual indicator that we have is that person honest and genuine? And that's actually the only thing I look for.
How do you ascertain that?
You just gotta feel it, man. You know, like, do I feel like this person would sell out? Do I feel like this guy would lie to me for the sake of money? Do I feel like this guy would make up content just for the sake of clicks and views? And if you feel in your heart at all, yes, I feel like that guy would sell me out, turn him off. That's my gauge of everyone I watch. And when I watched Doug, I was like, dude, I don't agree with him at all.
This guy's crazy.
This guy's kind of off the wall. But I think
Nobody would pretend to be that.
But I think he really believes it, you know? And again, I don't agree with a lot of it, but I felt like you were at least being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And that, for me, is the only thing I care about when I watch somebody.
Okay.
What would you say your views are now, like today, about like politics, or like give us kind of like your overview of what's going on?
I think that I hate politics. I talk about politics all the time.
Yeah.
I hate politics.
Yeah.
I think it's so
Same.
disingenuous. I think Congress people are extremely disingenuous. I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of congressmen in the last year. I don't know why. I don't know why they keep on giving me access, but I've had an opportunity. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to frame that. And I was around in one of these political events, and the congressman walks by with their chief of staff. They walk by and the chief says, "Hey, yeah, you should say hi to Matt Kim." And they come by and she's like, "Oh, yes, nice to meet you." Really dismissive and walks away. The chief of staff leans over and whispers in her ear, like, "Oh, yeah, he does this and he's not. She turns around so fast. "Matt Kim, I love you. I love what you do. I watch you all the time. You're amazing. I'm so glad you do what you do. And I just want to know I support you. I would love to do something today." I'm like, "Listen, you dumb bitch. You are so disingenuous. I hate you so much. It's so disgusting."
Yeah.
Because you totally blew me off
Yeah.
when you didn't know what I do online. And all of a sudden, because your chief of staff said,
Yeah.
"You need to pay attention." Because God forbid, I go on the internet and say, "Oh, she blew me off." They are so scared. And then I realized something. The people that we put in charge of our society, they actually fear you. If you're able to organize and create
I mean,
voice,
they should, right?
And they do.
How our government should be.
they teach us
structured.
that they are in charge and we are not. But the reality is that they are extremely fearful of you. God forbid I go on and say, "That congressperson is super disingenuous and she blew me off." She's so worried that she's willing to sell her soul, embarrass herself, because it's really embarrassing.
Yeah.
Turn around like, "Matt Kim, I love you. You're the best. You're the most amazing person." I'm like, come on. That's ridiculous.
You know what
I hate you so much.
That reminded me of like when BTS came to the White House.
Hmm.
I'm just kind of like so like pandering to the Korean American
Yeah.
community.
Right. So, going back to China, though, you look at China and the U.S. today. There's this tension. Was it the House
War.
recently passed $1.6 billion to put out
Propaganda.
negative stuff about China? Do you think this we're told that this is because China is a threat to the U.S. They're trying to take over, whatever, fuck with us or something. Some people say no, that China's just competing better. I tend to agree with that angle. I don't think they're really trying to, be malicious.
Sabotage.
No, it's like when they're villainizing TikTok, they're like, "Oh, China's stealing all this data," and I was like, "Yeah, data so they could sell us stuff. They don't care about
Also,
our fucking weapons."
didn't you say that they were the only tech company to have all their data stored at the Oracle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as a
Which
Christian,
is a CIA psyop.
but as a Korean American Christian conservative leaning type from Atlanta, and you meet lots of people, you may hear some other information. Like, what's your take on the whole China thing?
So, again, I've been to China many times, and it's fascinating how much the people in China love Americans. Maybe not the government, but actual people. Everywhere you go, it is a poster of Kobe Bryant or LeBron James. They love
They had
basketball.
that big Kanye concert.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kanye. I was in China the weekend that they were doing the Chinese basketball championship game, and on the winning team was Stephon Marbury. and he played for the Beijing Ducks or whatever it is. I forget what the team name is.
Yeah.
And I was in Beijing,
Peking duck.
and they were so excited, and they were all rooting for Stephon Marbury because he's like leading their team to win the championship. Like, they don't hate America. At least the people don't.
Yeah, that's true. And, I've heard that from Americans here is like, we don't hate Chinese people. We hate the government. But then they say racist shit about Chinese people too. So, but I don't know if Chinese people are that way.
Like anti-white.
No, like they'll say, we have a problem with the American government, not the American people. And then go around say, I don't know. I guess I could say,
Waylo. Or White Devil.
1.4 billion people. There are
Yeah.
going to be people that say
Sure.
negative things. Just like 350 million people here, there are going to be people that say negative things. But as a whole, I think neither side are actually overly that racist towards each other.
I guess I think I'm going by when I read internet comments. Like any story about China or something. It doesn't even have to be, it could be something bland about just something unrelated to politics. And it just, I don't know, it kind of annoys me personally when I see.
I hear it in real life all the time. Anti-Chinese rhetoric, anti-Asian rhetoric all the time.
Majority of the anti-Asian rhetoric and racism in America are in the cities and areas where they say racism is a problem.
Yeah.
If you go to where
Liberal
I live,
cities, yeah.
in a very conservative, and I live in a very conservative white part of Georgia now, there is no racism. Nobody ever gives me a hard time. No one's ever looking at me. I go out with my wife and my daughter and sometimes my parents, and we'll go to a restaurant and we'll speak in Korean. No one's walking by and go, why are they here? Why? Never happens.
That happens more in New York and San Francisco for sure.
New York,
even
San Francisco,
before even
LA.
before the pandemic.
Yeah, this is where this stuff happens. The places that tell you racism is a problem it's crazy to me because they live in more racist societies.
You know, I lived in the desert up until like a few years ago. I lived in the desert a few years, not 90 minutes from here. And the area is very rural, but a lot of conservative white people there, like hillbilly types. And it was interesting because I wouldn't say I really had anything really racist experiences. Or it was actually more like, okay, so the guy's name's Joe, right? Hillbilly dude and his hillbilly friends. You know, he called me Chinaman or something, right? He's just kind of more ignorant or kind of silly. But he called me Chinaman and all this, but then he would invite me to his home for like, you know, he's like, yeah, come to my house party. And, you know, I'm like one of the lucky 8 people or something, you know? And, you know, he'd offer me drinks and all this. I'm like, okay, he is racist-ish, but it's not like malicious, I think. It's more like ignorance.
Yeah.
But he still, you know, he wants to invite me to his home and all that. And I had those kinds of experiences out there, whereas out here in LA, here's the crazy thing is, I had all these like white liberal friends, and white conservative friends, whatever. And they would always be like, yeah, you know, we gotta, you know this, you know what I mean, right? And then when I started saying something political that they didn't like, they would be like, these liberals, why are you here then?
Yeah.
Like, maybe you should go back, you know, despite the fact that I was born here. And then I realized, like, wow, okay, so were these people just pretending to be my friend? Or like, they were okay to keep me around as a friend so long as I didn't challenge their political views or something. And then their racism came out, and I'm like, oh, this is what they really think of me. Whereas Hillbilly Joe calls me Chinaman and all this, but then he invites me over to his home and gives me drinks and food and all this. And so, yeah, I think that's my experience here. So it's kind of weird, you know.
See, racism doesn't actually bother me. I think racism is actually okay. I think we should embrace racism.
How do you embrace?
Well, understand that we judge people based on characteristics, the way they look, where they're from, where they live, all the time. If you're in LA and you hate New York because of a baseball team, like that's the same thing, actually. Why do we care?
Tribalism, you mean?
Tribalism,
Yeah.
one way, shape, or form. It's actually not a bad thing. When I go to a Chinese restaurant and the cook is white and the host is white and all the people eating there are white, I'm like, I don't have to eat the food. I think, and I'm probably right, this food's gonna suck. That's pretty racist, actually. I'm assuming that because only white people eat at the white-owned Chinese restaurant, that's not gonna be good. I go to a Chinese restaurant and everyone's Chinese. And the waiter is Chinese and the cook is Chinese and it's filled with Chinese people. I'm like,
This
"Dude,
probably is pretty good."
This food's gonna slap, you know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
be amazing. I don't want to walk into a Mexican restaurant and there's no Mexicans there. Like that's not gonna be good. If I'm playing at a basketball court and I have a choice between the Asian guy and the tall black guy that looks like he jumps really high, I'm gonna choose a black guy to be on my team. That's racist as hell. What's wrong with that?
Well, I mean, if he's bigger and stronger, then is that really racist then? Because like obviously, if you were saying there's 2 guys equally strong and equally, you know, looking
again-
like they could dunk or whatever, and you pick the black guy anyway, then that's racism. But if it's like if you're picking between a 5'5" Chinese guy and a 7' black guy, then it's just like obvious.
There are so many like gray in picking and choosing, just like that.
Yeah.
Right? That it's not so clear cut. And I think we embrace the idea that people are different, that it's okay. That it's okay that you are different than I am, that some people jump higher than others, some people are better at math than others. Like there's actually nothing wrong with that because it's just true.
So I think you're more saying that you're okay with the idea that there's no such thing as like race blindness, which is what liberals try to push, where like everyone's equal and everyone comes from the same kind of thing, and so everyone should have the same exact experience, whether they have earned it or not. Where you're talking about like, because like that could be racist too, of like affirmative action, all this other stuff, and so you're not saying that that's okay, right? Like race that kind
No,
of.
I
racism.
am not an affirmative action person at all.
Yeah.
I think that, and I want to say that I believe in meritocracy, but although by saying that it's actually not true because meritocracy actually doesn't exist in the world.
Yeah.
Right? There's no such thing as you work hard and you're going to get the best result. There's so much nuance regarding relationship, who you know, where you're from, history, etc. So there's no such thing as a true meritocracy. That is actually a lie that we're told just to make us work harder. I get that. But I believe that it should be somewhat meritocracy based. So as far as affirmative action, if you are going to have a company, I want to have the best person to do the job. I don't want the most diverse group of people to do the job. And I think that's fair. I think most people actually agree with that.
Yeah.
You only think that of other people's businesses. But when it's your own, like, no, like I'm good. Like, I want the best of the best.
That's funny you say that because my friend, who's kind of like liberal leaning in New York, so he's Indian and his wife's Korean, and he was like, on principle, he said, "Oh, I agree with affirmative action, but I might change my mind if they, go after my kids in terms of the Stuyvesant, stuff and the SHSAT
Right.
stuff that's going on
Okay,
there."
we got to start wrapping up. But before, oh, do you want to add anything to this? No. Oh, okay, all right.
I thought no, I wasn't about to say something. No,
Okay, because you've just been looking like you're thinking very hard. With
I
your-
was.
Okay. Okay. So one thing I wanted to get to before we finish this is a big issue that's been going on for the last year, and we're talking about, of course, Israel and Gaza, Palestine, whatever. And, also now Lebanon, Iran, Yemen's involved, U.S. What's your take as a conservative-leaning Christian Korean American on
That's a lot of words, by the way.
should we support one side or the other? Like, what's your take on all this?
I'm extremely anti-war.
Okay.
I think that physical war actually doesn't really exist.
What do you mean by physical war?
So we live in a digital world. Everything about our lives is digital. Everything, from our banking to our life to our to relationships to our communication, everything is digital. But in war, they're trying to convince us that the war is physical, which is analog. Actually, the war is in propaganda. It's war for people's narrative, people's minds. And that's the actual war. And the physical war that they show is just to prove the existence of the digital war. For example, if someone young influencer starts to make a little bit of money and they want to show the world that they're rich, what do? Buy a
car.
Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Take a picture with it. That's the way you show the world that you're rich. It justifies your actions on the internet. If you are in war and you are in a propaganda war, which is what this is, propaganda war, you have to show hang gliders of people invading a country because that's really clickable. Now when they say we're going to spend $1 billion in war, people are like, oh yeah, remember the hang gliders? That's really memorable. Yeah, there's a big war going on. Actually, most wars, even when they say so many people died, compared to society, it's actually really small. Yes, people do die, and that's unfortunate. But they are more the showing of the war, and the actual war is what goes behind. And I'm against that. Because the whole thing is propaganda. It's a propaganda war. You believe one side, believe the other side. At the end of the day, fix my problems here.
So you think the U.S. should not support either side? Do not send weapons or money to Israel or
Let
whatever.
them figure it out.
Let Israel figure its
figure
own
it out.
stuff out.
I don't
Okay.
know why the U.S. is
I
the
agree with
world's
that.
police. I'm just not for that. I think if you can't help, the role of government is two things. One, to settle disputes between states, federal government, and number two, keep your population safe.
So considering that, what is and you said you researched the Korean War, what is your take then on America's involvement in Korea?
Well, it really bothers me that when we talk about 6 million people dying during World War II, we only talk
You're
about
about to-
Jews.
Yeah.
but we never talk about the 6 million Koreans that died.
Oh, there were 6 million Koreans that died?
4 to 6 million, whatever that number is.
During the World War II or during the occupation?
Korean War.
Oh, Korean War.
Korean
okay,
War.
okay.
And that's the number we don't talk about. And the reality is, the reason why so many people died is if you're the U.S. government and U.S. military and you're trying to carpet bomb and try to remove the opposing force from the sky or of the government or whoever you are, you can't tell the difference between a North Korean and a South Korean because in reality, they're both Korean.
Yeah.
There's no way to tell the difference. So how do you get rid of your opposition? You just carpet bomb everybody. They say that just as much firepower was used in the Korean War than there was during the atomic bombs of Japan.
All the bombings, I think, combined.
All the bombs.
Yeah,
combined. Yeah.
Yeah, more bombs in Korea than the U.S. Entire of U.S. World War II. U.S. used in the Pacific Theater.
And then that was surpassed by the Vietnam War.
And more than anything, it bothers me that Koreans themselves don't know this.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge problem.
You think that's probably by design?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's propaganda.
But there's people like Doug and you, right? So, and me, maybe, and Ed, letting Koreans know what's up.
Or the Morpheuses.
Ktown Social Club, where we talk about the issues that you really care about. We're giving you Korean truth today. 4 Koreans, 4 different perspectives, but, you know, we all agree we had our own Holocaust, yeah. I never heard the 6.
We have
I heard up to 4,
I
but
mean,
6? Okay,
in-
that's
There's
in
a
that
reason.
range, you
There's a
can't
reason
track.
why Koreans have Han, right? There's we've been colonized since 1910, pretty much. First by the Japanese, then continued by the Americans, in my opinion. And even before that, we were a tributary state to China for centuries. So we always kind of like had to contend with other people's, stepping in our shit. And that's why most Koreans are kind of like combative.
yeah.
I think the most interesting thing that I've thought about before is in 50 years or 100 years, after all of this war and all of these things that happened within North Korea and South Korea, with the decimation of the population by not having children in South Korea, after all of this, the side that may actually survive this is North Korea.
Yeah.
Which is,
for
I
sure.
think, something people need to think about. Like, why is that even true?
Yeah.
They played the long
True.
game.
True. All right. Well, anything coming up in the future? Any announcements or
Anything-
plans?
Yeah. Are you getting involved in any events or political stuff?
I go where the people ask me to go.
Okay. Well, definitely we hope you return to Koreatown, Los Angeles. I know it's not as safe as Duluth or Atlanta or whatever, but we hope you'll come back and we can talk more about, share our perspectives and all that. So anyway, thank you for coming. We'll have all his information in the description box below. So yeah,
You already did that.
you've been.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
See you next time.
You've been wait. You've been watching Ktown Social Club, and we had a great episode. I'm Michael Kim. Thanks to Ed Choi, Douglas Kim, and our special guest Matt Kim. We'll see you all next time on Ktown Social Club. See you later, everybody. Bye
Got
bye.
3 Kims.
3 Kims and a Choi. Yeah.
Technically,
Awesome.
it's Choi and 3 Kims because Chad.
Where are you staying though?
I've been staying here at the
But not for the Korean
Oh,
alphabet, which
did
is
you walk here?
Kiuk.
No,
Or
I was
Chia.
at another